The moment 34-year-old Sergeant Michael Rodriguez and his 8-year-old son Jake walked onto the Voice Kids stage together, something profound filled the air. Not because of Michael's crisp military bearing or the way Jake's small hand gripped his father's with desperate intensity, but because of the weight they carried, the knowledge that this moment was both a beginning and an ending, a celebration and a goodbye wrapped into one heart-wrenching performance. What nobody in that studio knew was that Michael had exactly 63 days left before his deployment to overseas active duty. And this audition represented not just Jake's dream, but their last chance to create a memory together that could sustain them through 18 months of separation. Hidden in their story was a bond forged by duty, strengthened by sacrifice, and sustained by the kind of love that military families understand better than anyone. Love that must be strong enough to survive distance, time, and the constant fear that comes with serving your country. Let me take you back to understand how this extraordinary father and son reached this stage, because their journey proves that some heroes wear uniforms, and some of the bravest battles are fought not on foreign soil, but in the hearts of 8-year-old boys trying to understand why Daddy has to go away. Sergeant Michael Rodriguez had been serving in the United States Army for 12 years, ever since he enlisted at 18, with dreams of serving his country and providing for the family he hoped to have someday. He'd met Jake's mother, Maria, during his first stateside assignment, and they'd married in a small ceremony just before Michael's first deployment to Afghanistan. Jake had been born while Michael was overseas, and for the first 6 months of his son's life, Michael had known him only through video calls and photographs. When Michael finally returned home, he'd held his baby boy for the first time and made a promise that would define his approach to fatherhood. Every moment together would count, every day would be precious, and love would be the bridge that connected them across any distance the military required. But military life had tested that promise repeatedly. Michael had been deployed 3 more times during Jake's early childhood, missing first steps, first words, birthdays, and countless bedtime stories. Each separation had been agony for both father and son, but they'd developed their own ways of staying connected across continents and time zones. Music had become their lifeline. Michael would call Jake every night when he was deployed, and they would sing together over crackling international phone connections. "You Are My Sunshine" became their song, their way of saying, "I love you," when words felt inadequate and distance felt impossible to bear. Jake had inherited his father's love of music, but more than that, he'd inherited Michael's sense of duty and honor. At 8 years old, Jake understood things that other children his age couldn't comprehend. He knew that his daddy served something bigger than himself, that other families needed protecting, that freedom came at a cost that people like his father paid willingly. But understanding didn't make the separations easier. Each time Michael left for deployment, Jake would stand at the window for hours, singing their song and watching for a father who wouldn't return for months. Maria would find him there in the evenings, this little boy carrying burdens that seemed too heavy for such small shoulders. The devastating news had come during what was supposed to be Michael's permanent assignment to a base just 2 hours from their home in North Carolina. Due to escalating conflicts overseas, Michael's unit was being deployed again, this time for 18 months. The longest separation he and Jake had ever faced. "When do you have to go, Daddy?" Jake had asked when Michael sat him down to explain the situation, his 8-year-old voice trying to sound brave despite the tears pooling in his eyes. "In about 2 months, buddy. But we're gonna make every day count until then, okay?" Jake had been quiet for a long time, processing this information in the way children do when their world is about to change dramatically. Then he'd looked up at his father with determination that broke Michael's heart. "Daddy, before you go, can we sing together on that TV show, the one where people sing their best songs?" Michael had been confused at first. "What TV show, Jake?" "The Voice Kids. We could sing our song, and then when you're far away, you can watch it and remember that I love you all the way to the moon and back." The idea had seemed impossible at first. Michael was a soldier, not a performer. Jake was a sweet kid with a nice voice, but they'd never considered themselves singers in any professional sense. Their music was private, personal, the soundtrack to a military family's daily life. But as the deployment date approached, Michael realized that Jake's idea wasn't about winning a competition or achieving fame. It was about creating something permanent, something that could exist beyond separation, something that would prove their love was stronger than any distance the army could put between them. The audition process had been overwhelming for Michael and Jake. They'd never been in a recording studio, had never auditioned for anything, had never been in Los Angeles. The Voice Kids producers had been moved by their story, a military father and son wanting to create one last memory before an extended deployment, and had worked around Michael's military schedule to make their audition possible. Standing on the Voice stage now, Michael felt the weight of his uniform, the responsibility of representing not just his family but all military families who made similar sacrifices. Jake stood beside him in his best clothes, a button-down shirt and khakis that Maria had bought specially for this occasion. Looking so small and vulnerable under the bright lights, Blake Shelton, Kelly Clarkson, John Legend, and Niall Horan sat in their red chairs, their backs turned, unaware that they were about to meet representatives of the military families who served their country in ways that extended far beyond the battlefield. Families who understood that love was measured not in time spent together, but in the strength of bonds that could survive anything. "Whenever you're ready," Blake called out encouragingly, his voice carrying that familiar warmth that somehow made the enormous studio feel more like home. Michael stepped forward slightly, his military posture automatically commanding attention and respect. "Before Jake and I sing, I need to tell you why we're here." The coaches remained in their chairs, but something in Michael's voice, the authority of someone accustomed to being heard, mixed with the vulnerability of a father facing separation from his son, made them all lean forward. "I'm Sergeant Michael Rodriguez, United States Army. In 63 days, I'll be deploying overseas for 18 months. This will be the longest time Jake and I have ever been apart." Michael's voice began to crack with emotion, despite his military training in maintaining composure. Jake is 8 years old, and he's already been through more deployments than most kids his age should have to handle. But he's never complained, never made me feel guilty for serving our country. Jake looked up at his father, seeing the tears that Michael was trying to hold back, and something broke inside his small heart. The 8-year-old who had been trying so hard to be brave suddenly couldn't contain his emotions anymore. "I don't want Daddy to go away again," Jake said into the microphone, his voice small but clear, carrying across the silent studio. "He always comes back, but it takes so long, and I miss him every single day." Tears began streaming down Jake's face as he continued, "Daddy says he has to go help other people be safe, and I'm proud of him. But I wish other people could help sometimes so Daddy could stay home with me." The studio fell into profound silence as everyone processed what they were hearing, not just the words, but the weight they carried, the innocence of a child trying to understand adult concepts like duty and sacrifice, the heartbreak of a military family facing another separation. Michael knelt down beside Jake, his large hands gentle on his son's small shoulders, his military composure cracking as he watched his 8-year-old carry burdens that no child should have to bear. "Jake, buddy, you know Daddy doesn't want to leave you, right? You know this is the hardest thing Daddy ever has to do?" Jake nodded through his tears. "I know, Daddy. I just want to sing our song so when you're far away, you can remember that I love you all the way to the moon and back." Blake Shelton felt something he'd never experienced in all his years of coaching. This wasn't just about a singing competition anymore. This was about a military family facing the hardest reality of service, that protecting freedom means sacrificing time with the people you love most. Without hesitation, Blake was out of his chair and walking onto the stage, his cowboy boots clicking against the polished floor, as he approached this father and son who represented everything he respected about military service and family dedication. When Blake reached Michael, he did something that silenced the entire studio. He snapped to attention and rendered a perfect military salute, one civilian to a soldier, acknowledging the sacrifice that Michael and his family made every day. "Sergeant Rodriguez," Blake said formally, holding the salute until Michael returned it. "Thank you for your service to our country. And thank you for raising a son who understands what real heroism looks like." Michael's composure finally broke completely as he received this recognition, this moment of respect from someone he'd admired for years. "Thank you, sir, that means more than you know." Blake then knelt down to Jake's level, his voice gentle but strong. "Jake, buddy, do you know what makes your daddy a hero?" Jake wiped his eyes, looking at this tall country star who somehow felt like family. "Because he helps keep America safe?" "That's part of it," Blake replied. "But what makes him a real hero is that he's willing to miss time with you, the person he loves most in the whole world, so that other kids can be safe with their daddies. That's the biggest sacrifice anyone can make." But this is the moment no one in the studio and no one watching at home ever saw coming. Blake turned to address the other coaches, his voice carrying across the studio with the authority of someone who understood that some moments transcend entertainment. "Kelly, John, Niall, I need you to turn your chairs around. Sergeant Rodriguez and Jake aren't just here to audition. They're here to show us what real courage looks like, what real love sounds like, and what it means to serve something bigger than yourself." One by one, the coaches turned their chairs to face the military family. Kelly Clarkson was already crying, understanding as a mother what it meant to face extended separation from your child. John Legend looked moved beyond words by the gravity of their sacrifice. Niall sat forward with the kind of respectful attention that showed he recognized something extraordinary happening. Blake gently placed one hand on Michael's shoulder and the other on Jake's, creating a protective circle around this father and son who had already given so much in service to their country. "Now," Blake said softly, "I want you two to sing the way you do when you're saying goodbye, the way you do when love has to be strong enough to cross oceans and time zones. Show us what military families sound like when they sing together." Michael looked down at Jake, who nodded through his tears, and together they began to sing "Proud to be an American," not the polished version that played at sporting events, but a raw, honest interpretation that told the story of people who understood what freedom really cost, who lived the lyrics every day through service and sacrifice. Father and son's voices blended in harmonies that had been perfected not in recording studios, but in military base housing and during video calls across continents, while saying hello and goodbye and hello again through deployments and homecomings. Michael's voice provided the steady foundation while Jake's innocent soprano soared above it, creating something that was both heartbreaking and incredibly beautiful. "And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me." As they sang, Jake reached up and took his father's hand, and Michael lifted him up so they could sing face to face, eye to eye, heart to heart, in a moment that captured everything about military family love, strong enough to survive anything, tender enough to heal any wound, permanent enough to last through any separation. When they finished, the silence in the studio was reverent. This wasn't just a performance, it was a declaration, a promise, a demonstration of the kind of love that keeps military families strong through impossible circumstances. All four coaches hit their buttons simultaneously, but everyone understood this wasn't about competition anymore. This was about honor, respect, and recognition of the sacrifices that military families make every day to keep America free. Blake pulled both Michael and Jake into a hug that lasted longer than any embrace in voice history, understanding that he was holding not just contestants, but representatives of the military families who serve their country in ways that extend far beyond active duty. "Sergeant Rodriguez," Jake, Blake said, his voice thick with emotion, "you just reminded everyone in this room what real heroism sounds like. It doesn't come from stages or spotlights. It comes from people who are willing to sacrifice their own happiness so that others can be safe and free." Kelly Clarkson herself moved beyond words, added through her tears, "Michael, Jake, what you just shared with us was more than music. You showed us what love looks like when it has to be stronger than distance, stronger than fear, stronger than anything that tries to separate families. John Legend said, "You've given us a master class in courage, in service, in the kind of values that make America worth defending. Thank you for your sacrifice, and thank you for sharing your love with us." Niall, clearly emotional, said simply, "You're both heroes. Your service, your sacrifice, your love for each other, that's what real strength looks like." Michael and Jake chose Team Blake, not because of strategy, but because they recognized in him someone who understood what it meant to serve something bigger than yourself. Someone who respected the military values that had shaped their family. Over the following weeks, Blake became more than their coach. He became their advocate, their friend, and their reminder that military families deserved recognition and support from all Americans. Blake quietly arranged for other military families to attend tapings, created special segments honoring service members, and used his platform to remind viewers of the sacrifices made by military families every day. "Working with Michael and Jake changed everything for me," Blake said in an interview during the live shows. "They reminded me that freedom isn't free, that there are families out there making sacrifices every day so that the rest of us can sleep safely at night. They're the real stars, the real heroes." Michael and Jake's journey through the competition became a celebration of military families, of service members who put country before self, of children who grow up understanding that love sometimes means letting go so others can be protected. Their version of Coming Home brought the studio to its feet. Their duet with Blake on God Bless the USA became a tribute to all service members and their families. During the finale, Michael and Jake performed an original song Blake had helped them write, called 63 Days. As they sang about making every moment count before deployment, about love that survives any distance, about the pride and pain of military service, there wasn't a dry eye in the studio. Jake finished second in the competition, but their real victory was already won. The attention from their voice appearance had connected them with military support organizations, had raised awareness about the challenges facing military families, and had created a permanent record of their love that would sustain them through 18 months of separation. In their final performance speech, delivered with Jake in Michael's arms, they shared a message that resonated far beyond the competition. "We want every military family to know that your service matters, your sacrifice is seen, and your love is strong enough to survive anything. And we want every American to remember that freedom comes at a cost, that military families pay every day." Blake stood behind them throughout their speech, tears streaming down his face as this soldier and his 8-year-old son taught the world a lesson about service, sacrifice, and the kind of love that makes America worth defending. Today, Michael is serving overseas, and Jake is at home with his mother, counting down the days until his daddy comes home. But they still sing together every night over video calls, still share their music across continents and time zones, still prove that military family love is strong enough to survive anything. The uniform Michael wore on the voice stage is now carefully preserved in Jake's room, a reminder of the day they shared their love with the world and proved that some heroes wear fatigues, and some of the most important battles are fought in the hearts of military families who serve their country every single day. Blake Shelton learned something that night that changed his understanding of heroism forever. "Michael and Jake taught me that the real heroes aren't just the ones who fight overseas. They're the families who fight every day to stay connected, to stay strong, to keep loving each other no matter how far apart they are. Because sometimes the most beautiful songs are sung by voices that understand sacrifice. Sometimes the most powerful performances come from people who know that love must be strong enough to survive anything. And sometimes a soldier and his 8-year-old son can teach everyone what it really means to serve something bigger than yourself, to love something more than your own comfort, to prove that freedom really isn't free. It's paid for by military families who give everything so that others can have everything." Michael and Jake Rodriguez proved that the voice isn't about becoming famous, it's about using whatever platform you're given to honor the people who serve, to recognize the families who sacrifice, and to remind everyone that the most important performances happen not on stages but in the daily acts of service that keep America free and strong.